Hi, Nick. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good, thanks, Ethan. How are you doing?
I'm all right, thank you. We've had this one planned for a while, so it's great to finally get to do it. Obviously, you were caught up in the fires in America. How are you
Yeah,
doing with all that?
yeah, we're pretty good. I mean, you never think anything that's going to happen to you, and luckily it didn't. But it got close, so we were under evacuation orders, which meant we had to like pack a single suitcase and be ready to leave. And so, I mean, a single suitcase. I can't put my life in a single suitcase. It was like a panic station, and yeah, and suddenly it was within a mile of our house, and so we were running around like crazy and putting stuff together, and then the wind blew it away, luckily, because I know a lot of people lost their houses. So and so we've got this emergency sort of kit in case anything like that happens again. And one of the things they say is pack a transistor radio, because if all of the internet goes down, the only way you're going to be able to hear anything is through transistor radio. Now, I don't know how many of your viewers or people who follow your podcast even know what transistor radio is. But when I was young, I was talking to you about this earlier, that we especially living in England, we only had three TV channels. They finished at 11 o'clock at night. There was no internet at all. And the only way you could really listen to anything or get informed was by having a transistor radio. And transistor radio, you get the radio stations. But the really good music wasn't on Radio 1 or anything like that. Once in a while, it was John Peel and people like him. But there was these two radio stations offshore Britain. I think that there's a sort of limit. If they're more than 3 miles offshore, it doesn't come under the UK licensing laws. Radio Caroline and Radio Luxembourg, and it was a really tight. It was a when you tune the tuner in, it was like one of those things. If you went too far one way, you wouldn't get it, and it would be all this noise, and it was a crap quality, but you heard great stuff on there. Like yeah, the Kinks or the Doors or early Stones. I mean, I must have been about 9 or 10, and late at night I'd listen to Under the Sheets in my bed, listen to this transistor radio. And that was the only way you really could really keep in touch with what's going on. It was unlike the generation now, where it's really easy research-wise to find anything. Like what I do think is wonderful is that I remember an obscure song from back then. I can find it straight away, and I can download it. That didn't exist. You really had to try and go out of your way to find bands like I discovered Roxy Music and Bowie and T Rex and people like that. But they didn't always store their records in some of the stores, so it was it made you more determined. It was really I always it's a bit like being a pirate, where you'd have to kind of go out and grab what you could when it was there because it wasn't accessible. So my interest in music started by listening to that, and then my led me into a career accidentally was I love the album covers. Not just because of the way they looked, and why I got into Roxy was because I love the Roxy Music album covers. I met Brian Ferry many years later, actually, and told him he was an inspiration to me to become an album cover designer. But on those album covers, they were like these manuscripts, like the Dead Sea Scrolls or something like that. Because when you got this little thing and you took out the sleeve and you looked at all the lyrics, and then it had who played this and played that on the tracks. I found that really fascinating, and you would begin to put things together, and you would see the connections between Bowie and the Rolling Stones like Lou Reed, and you see, oh, this is a little world that's connected. And there was a friend of mine, well, not a friend actually. I was really intimidated by him actually. His name was Prune Russell Marsh, and one day he showed up at school with the Aladdin Sane album cover with David Bowie. Now, you've got to understand that now we've seen all these people do this, Harry Styles or whatever, but then a man with like really skinny, white face with a red stripe across his face was like seeing an alien from another planet. I was so fascinated by this look, and it was all it wasn't calculated like I think a lot of these artists like Harry Styles wearing a dress. To me, that's really calculated and yeah. But Bowie was just experimenting. He was experimenting with his sexuality. He was experimenting by wearing a dress. He was experimenting with makeup. He was experimenting with all things. And there was nobody, really nobody, doing anything like that. And so that brought me deeper into it because when you see this person, like, what kind of music does he make? And I love that album because of that, the Bowie album. Now, I think back on it, I think, why did you bring the album to school? Because you couldn't listen to it. And what I realized, us being English, and I don't know what's up when you went to school, but we had to wear a school uniform. And so everybody had the same identity. So he brought this to school to show what his identity. This is who I am. I'm not like everyone else. This is what I like. Because people would look at it and go, "Oh, you're weird." And so that's the reason I thought, what a cool thing. You bring a record to cover, a record to school that you can't play, but you want to show who you are as a person. So that was a very inspirational, I thought. So I got into those groups, Bowie. I liked Slade as well. And there was a cut and it was Sweet and some of the sort of fake kind of rock bands. And that's really how I got into it. And when I it was, and I say this in my documentary, it was almost like a magical world that you couldn't get to. It was like the Wizard of Oz. It was wonderful and it's interesting, but there was no way you could get to it. It was like, well, I came from a working class single parent. I grew up in South England, born in London, East End of London, and then we moved out to the suburbs to St Albans, and I went to a regular, state school, comprehensive school, and really and I was creative, but there was no outlet for an artist. If you said you wanted to be an artist, everyone would beat the shit out of you. So I was like, had an arty mother, but I lived in a council estate, and so I was, trying to figure out what am I going to do with my life. I didn't know what I wanted to do. When you're 16, you don't know what the fuck you want to do, and I thought, well, I better get a job. So to cut a long story short, I did this. They used to have this test where you wrote down, answer these questions, and they put it into a computer. This is when computers were first starting in the early 70s. Everything went to a computer, and you fed it into a computer, and the computer came out with what job you're suited for. And mine was a printer. And I thought, okay, I'll do that. I didn't really know what printer was. And so I left school at 16. And I got two O levels. I left school, and I got a job as a printer. And I walked in the door. Funny enough, the guy Prune I was talking about, he was working in the same place when I left. And he used to draw little chalk drawings up around the place and write, like stickman, write Iggy. Iggy, what is Iggy? So I went to work at this place, but I absolutely hated it. I mean, it was like, I realized that if back then, if you're working class, you didn't have much choice to do anything else except for work in a factory, maybe get a job in an office. Yeah, that was it. There was no real choice. And you kind of accepted it to a degree because you thought, well, this is not this other stuff I love is just a fantasy. What I'm doing now is reality. And when I hit reality, it hit me over the head like a sledgehammer. And I thought, fuck this, I can't do that. And then I realized that I needed to get more exams because I failed. So I went to College of Further Education, and which is where I met a friend of mine. And I got another job again, long story short. And then this is when punk happened in 1976. And he told me about this group called the Sex Pistols. Now, the interesting story about that is, and I know you had Glenn on your show, is my friend Pete, he was actually from the north, but he moved down south. He was from Newcastle, and he had been to see the David Bowie show, the same one that I saw. It was the Thin White Duke tour in 1976, and he was brilliant. Actually, he was absolutely brilliant. He had the white shirt, the black waistcoat, the orange hair slicked back. He was like, it was fantastic, and he'd been to the show, and what he did is he took photographs of the audience. It was fascinating because Bowie had all these. He had the Ziggy guys, you had the Lad Insane crowd, and again, as English, we're very tribal about football, tribal about our look, tribal, and that's something I think is great about Great Britain. You've got Scotland, you've got the North, you've got the South, you've got what, and everybody's very tribalistic about where they come from, but they're also tribalistic about the music they're into. And so my friend Pete would go and take pictures of the audience, and he saw this guy sitting down who looked really bored and disinterested. And Pete said, "Can I take your picture?" And he said, "Yeah, okay." And Pete said to him, do you like Roxy? He go, "Yeah, yeah." No, "Do you like Bowie?" And he said, "Yeah, yeah, he used to be good." He said, "What about, do you see Roxy?" He goes, "Yeah, they used to be good too." So Pete said to him, "Well, who do you like?" And he said, "Oh, it's this great band. They're called the Sex Pistols." Now, this guy turned out to be Sid Vicious. It was Sid Vicious before he was Sid Vicious. And he's got a picture he took of Sid sitting down with his lame jacket on and a cowboy t-shirt. And so Sid Vicious indirectly got us involved with punk because then Pete said, "Look, we've got to check out this band." And suddenly you saw a little story about them in the new NME. And then you saw a couple of controversial articles. And we went to go try and see them at Dingwalls, but the show got cancelled. And that about a month before, I'd been to the same Bowie show my friend Pete had been to at Wembley, at 15,000 people, and I had a restricted view ticket. So I was at the very, very back at the side, so I could only see the front of the stage. And I only saw Bowie when he came to the front of the stage. So 2 weeks later, or whenever it was, a month or a week or whatever, we went to the 100 Club to see this band called the Sex Pistols. Now, again, I'm at Wembley. It's a big arena. It's like almost Arthurian, legendary. It's like, oh my God, there's this God on stage, and it was like he was a tiny little guy. And I'm standing in this club. There's about 50 people in there. Kind of cool atmosphere, weird, sort of like funny energy in there, but something you knew it was great. Everybody kind of looked cool, but in a similar way that we were cool. And the fact we didn't dress in flares or any of that stuff. And suddenly the guy standing next to me got up on stage. Can't remember which one it was. Could have been Glenn even. And that was the band. That was the Sex Pistols. And I thought, oh my God, this is such a difference from Bowie. The guy standing next to me got up on stage with a guitar and he played. Blew my mind. Really blew my mind. And it was like, this is the most incredible thing I've ever seen. They're up there. They don't give a shit about what the audience think. They're actually quite miserable and antisocial. But there's something about them. I just went, well, we both went, this is brilliant. And they were doing the residency. So it started off with 50 people. And then he every week it got more and more and more. So by the time of the end of the residency, it went from about 50 people to about 150. It was a small club. And that's how I got, well, I didn't get started then because I was just a fan going to see the show. And then I realized these guys were not that much different from me. They were pretty working class. They were very creative because the look and the slogans they put on the t-shirt. And a friend of mine at college, a guy called Mick North, he knew Paul Simonon because he went to do a foundation course with Paul Simonon from The Clash. And he said, oh, if you see Paul, just say hi. And basically, my going out with Paul Simonon got me into music because he said, oh, I told him what I was doing. He goes, oh, maybe you should do one of our record covers one day. And I'm like, yeah. And then the rest is history, as they say. I met Bernie Rose through them. But simultaneously, I had a fanzine with my two friends at art school. We started a fanzine only really to get free records. We didn't care about the fanzine. We just would go to record labels and say, we've got a fanzine if we write about it. So we got piles of free albums, and we kept the good ones and we sold the shit ones to Virgin and got some money out of it or exchanged for records. And then one day we're at Phonogram getting free records. Phonogram had Sire Records, which is a New York label, which had the Ramones, the Talking Heads, and various other bands from that scene, the Saints, I think even. And they liked the way we looked. And they said, because we had these ripped T-shirts and everything, and said, would you be interested in doing a Ramones T-shirt for us as a promotional thing? They're putting a 12-inch out. We're putting a 12-inch out on Sire. I got to meet Seymour and Linda Stein, who started, both dead now, but who started I think Linda Stein was murdered, but they were these real hardcore New York Jewish kind of like hustlers. And they said, would you like to do a t-shirt? And we're like, yeah, great. But we were at art school, but we didn't really know how you did it. We just agreed to it, but we didn't know what the fuck we were doing. And so I've told this story a few times, but we had to go out to present this t-shirt to them, but we didn't know how to do it. And we were at art school, so we had a white t-shirt and a newspaper. And literally on the train going into London, going to this meeting from St. Albans, we were cutting things out of a newspaper and sticking it on the T-shirt. And we got there and we didn't care particularly, but they loved it. So we thought, oh God, we didn't even really have an opinion about it. And they said to us then, would you hand splash 1,500 T-shirts, which we agreed to do. And we went to a warehouse in Putney and started to get high from the fumes because it was like so toxic. And we did, I don't think we did all 1,500. I think we dumped some of them, but that's how we got started. And we didn't get paid. And we went to we got invited to the Ramones when they played at the Roundhouse in London with the Talking Heads and the Saints on the bill. And it was brilliant. They were brilliant, the Ramones, absolutely brilliant. They were like the icons for a lot of people that were into punk. Very different from England, very American with the leather jackets and the jeans, and that wasn't really our look, as it were. And we went to see them, but what we did find out was, punk turned into this cartoon image that everybody sees and thinks is punk, which is not punk. It's like people with Liberty spikes and chains and tattoo, and nobody looked like that. It wasn't anything like that. Yeah, a couple of people wore leather jackets, but primarily it was art school. People went to art school, and when you go to art school, you get paint on your clothes, and you've got no money, so your jumper's falling to pieces, and you stick a safety pin. Like, I've got to show. This is funny. I'm saying that because I've got a jumper and I've got that. I put a safety pin in there and like a thing, but you stick safety pins to keep the holes going, and it wasn't a pre. It was just a necessity because everyone was broke. I was at art school on a grant, and I was lucky. But I didn't have money to go out and spend on stuff. So you do what you could. And when you start getting paint on and shit on your clothes, you start going, oh, maybe I'll do this. And so people started to paint shirts. So that's what it was. It was more of an art school thing than it was this kind of glue sniffing, thing that they turned it into when it got popular in the press and these ridiculously over the top looking people with chains hanging out their nose. I mean, there were some people who put safety pins in their nose, but generally it was a very creative, arty kind of look. And a lot of very smart people from different art schools, which is where the band started, which is where Susie and the band she started, because we saw their first show at the 100 Club. They were first on the bill, and it was Marco Perrone, who ended up with Adam and the Ants and played with Sinead O'Connor, brilliant guy, still a friend. We're still friends, and then Susie was singing, Sid Vicious was on drums. And they stood up. I thought it was a joke because they did the Lord's Prayer. They did a version of the Lord's Prayer and then Deutschland, Deutschland über alles, which is like basically a Nazi theme. And I thought it was a joke, but they became a band, And that's exactly what punk was. It was, nobody was snobby about it. Oh, I got a band. I can't play much, but I got something to say. And that's how it evolved. And I think what's sad about now is that it's really difficult for anything like that to evolve like it did then. It's like because people jump on the image straight away, and in certain cases they've got the image figured out before they've got the music figured out, and to a degree that's what that was. But I don't think anybody did it for fame. I don't think anybody did it for making a load of money because nobody was making money. It was a very very organic involvement of a cultural scene, like most scenes are, like the psychedelic scene was. I don't think it just beautiful thing about it was it evolved, and album covers played a big role into that because we discovered the New York Dolls because of their album covers, great album covers. And then I guess you put two and two together. You're like, I'm at art school, so maybe I should go up to these guys in these bands and say, do you need a record cover doing? Because the other thing about it was they, the bands did all their own single covers. They didn't employ anyone to do it. It was just like they did it. Paul did it for the Clash, and eventually, as they get bigger and they're doing tour, they can't do it themselves, and so their manager or their friend or someone else would do it. And so I got in there with Bernie Rhodes, the manager of the Clash, and that meeting up at Psy, and basically that's how I got started. That's how the journey began, as it were.
Do you not
So
think do you not think you'd have had a career in music then if it wasn't for punk?
if it wasn't what?
If punk didn't come along, do you think you would have
Yeah,
had a
but
career in music?
well, that's a really good question. That's a really good question. I don't. You know what? I went to art school because a friend of mine. I used to play football on the Sunday pub team, and I was about 19, and we played it. And these people I was hanging out with were, well, I moved to St Albans when I was about 9, just before I started comprehensive school. And, I grew up. I grew up in North London, but I was born in the East End. And I moved out to this kind of suburb, and to me, I'm like, I'm a, it is in England, regional. I'm a Londoner. I said, what these fucking, and then I lived there, and I hated it. And these suburban, I know it can be rough in Leeds. It's got some rough areas in Leeds. But even a place like St Albans has these like really rough crew who are like, racist or homophobic, and I was starting to fall in with that crowd. I wasn't. I had to also keep myself. I had to almost like an undercover spy. I had to. My mother was really arty, and I went to the ballet. And if they knew I went to the ballet, they'd want to kick the shit out of me. So I was struggling, going, I don't belong in this because I wasn't racist. I didn't want to get in fights. I didn't want to. But the people I was with were doing that. And it's like, you see these things where the person is a spy, they're undercover, and they've got to start getting in. I saw an interesting documentary about football hooliganism, and this undercover cop got involved with it, but he had to get in the fights so they took him seriously. And I got to a point when it was getting close like that to me, and I'm like, this is my life. This is what I'm going to be. And one day I was playing football with my friend Chaz. I can remember it to this day. We were both central back, and we were both saying it was just before the game kicked off. And he said to me, this isn't you, is it, Nick? This lot, this crowd here are all getting arrested. And he said, you should go to art school. And I thought, what a funny thing, what a weird thing to say, right? And I didn't even know there was such a thing as art school. And I looked into it and I went to apply at Watford because it was close. And I got in. And I got in and I didn't know how the fuck I got in. And I went to, okay, well, this is better designing business cards for shitty little printing companies. It's better than being a printer. So that's how I got into the art side of it. And it just coincided right at that moment when punk happened. And this cottage industry you could tear pieces of paper and cut things out and stick it all down and it was spontaneous and it wasn't posy and that was perfect for me because I didn't know what I was doing. I was at art school, so I started to get some sort of technicality and fundamentals from it, and I kind of knew certain things, but really I made it up as I went along. And I actually learnt more from being a punk than I did at art school because I'd already done the Ramones t-shirt and the Clash, White Man Hammersmith Palais, and Dexys Midnight Runners first record while I was still at art school. So in the first 2 years, so I didn't learn any of that from art school. So I already had got into that thing because what I realized, and you obviously like this because you have an entrepreneurial sense and you have an idea of if I get hold of this person, and that's exactly how it is. You got to have a little bit of sus about it. You got to have a little bit of like, oh, you know what? Well, I just go and ask them. What have I got to lose? And yeah, the more you ask people, you're more surprised. They go, yeah, okay, that's great. So if you sit back and you don't do anything, you've got to be proactive. And obviously, you've done a similar thing where you go, I want to do this. I'm going to ask someone. They might say no, but hey, and that's the way you've got to keep going. You have to keep going that way and keep going and keep going. And then as I went along, I gradually saw that this is my destiny. This is what I was going to do. I spent most of my time completely broke, holes in my shoes, but I loved doing what I was doing. It was great. That was the more important thing. As long as I could eat, and that's how I've got by. Really, I've got by on this kind of um, thing that I didn't understand, but it was driving me to be involved and be involved in a creative way, and that's basically how I got involved with it. Now, I have a really good friend, and you should research him. And sadly, he's no longer with us. His name is Ken Robinson. He's from Liverpool. He's a working class Liverpool, and he came from a big Liverpool family. And he got polio when he was young, and so he couldn't. His family were very working class, so he went and his dad said, "You could get yourself an education." And anyway, he ended up being the dean of Warwick University, and he wrote a thing for the Tony Blair government about creativity at school and how we need to keep creativity at school. And he got knighted by the Queen because of this thing. He was a brilliant guy, and I met him at a time when I pretty much met everybody in my life. I wasn't impressed by anyone anymore, but I was impressed by this man. He was funniest sense of humor, and if you ever get a chance, look him up. Sir Ken Robinson's TED conference, where he does his talk because he's like a stand-up comic at the same time, but really smart about education. He tells his great story about this little girl at school, and she's drawing a picture, and the teacher comes up to her and says, what are you drawing there? And the little girl says, I'm drawing a picture of God. And the teacher says, well, no one knows what God looks like. And the little girl says, well, they will in a minute, which I thought was brilliant. And that's the way a child. And so he kind of encouraged that. But what he did, he's written a couple of books, and one of them said you need to have a mentor if you're going to be successful, but you also need to have that drive where most people hit a limit where they go, I can't keep going on this. I need to do it. But the people that succeed go beyond that. So my thing was, when I moved to New York, because I wanted to get out of London. I was in New York and I was working, not working at all, actually. I was going out every night, staying at the club, taking a lot of drugs and just being like, hey, this is brilliant. And one day I go, shit, I've got no money. I've got nothing, literally no money in my pocket, but I was going out all the time. And for example, my sister would have gone, that would have been too much for her. Yeah, I was living in someone friend's place that was had cockroaches and it was horrible. And all they had money for, all we had were crackers and peanut butter. And I'm like, she would have gone. Most people would have gone, no, that's it, I'm going back. But something about me goes, this is not going to stop me. And I kept going. I think you have to have that side to you just to, this is where it separates everybody else from everybody else. You go, most people wouldn't have gone as far as I did and not quit. Yeah, this is not working. I'm in a foreign country. I don't have any money. What am I going to do? I'm not even legal there. But something persisted and I kept going. And I actually had my most successful period in New York. So, but it didn't start that way. I was stuck up for punishment, I guess, because when I was in London, I was doing those things. Still had no money. Eventually started to get paid, but it wasn't really a lot. And I moved to New York, and I ended up with even less money, but in a different foreign place. So something had kept me going through those things. That something inside me was going, keep going. The other thing Ken says in his book is you need a mentor, and my mentor was Malcolm McLaren, and yeah, my generation, Malcolm McLaren was like a god. He was like that guy that was a sex. I mean, Bernie Rhodes was his partner, and Bernie was great to me, and I still got I love Bernie, but Malcolm was literally anybody that was into him. Malcolm, quite an enigma. And I met Malcolm up at EMI when I was working with Dexys, and Bernie introduced me to him, and so I got on with him. We got on great, and he never wanted to know. Did I have any degrees? Could I draw anything? But he asked me to do the Bow Wow Wow cover. And just because I was doing an album cover, he go, okay, you should do the Bow Wow Wow cover. And he's the person that believed in me. And if you don't have that person, you don't have that one person, he wasn't telling me, go do this, do this. He wasn't pushing me, but he was just always there. And he never questioned what I did. And he might give opinions or advice, but he he never thought, oh, you did something shit. I'll move on and get someone else. He would sort of talk you through it. And so he you need a person like that. You need a person that sort of unconditionally believes in what you do and doesn't ask for anything in return and just see something. And so that's what Malcolm did. And so I had really because I owe Malcolm everything. And all the stuff you hear about him, all the shit you hear about him, and all the stuff you hear about listen, he's just Svengali and he treats people like shit. And I can't, John Lydon is a total idiot because if it wasn't for Malcolm, he wouldn't have had it. And he's still to this day, even though Malcolm is dead, still like hates him. But I just saw something that was I sort of put him differently, and I look back at what I've done, and it's really, I was at the beginning of the punk movement in London, really at not the very, very beginning, but about 6 months after it started, where it was still small enough that nobody even heard the term punk, and there was only a handful of people that really knew it. And when you were together, those handful of people, you thought, well, we're a movement starting here. And I was also at the very beginning of hip hop in New York. So because I was doing that rock album cover because Malcolm was doing this record with Trevor Horn, and basically he said he was going around the world. He had this thing about bringing world music to the world, and he was kind of figuring it out. And this is right when hip hop started, and it was only in the Bronx at this point. And then there was a club called the Negril, and it was run by a friend of ours, and they brought Africa Bambaataa and all these people down to this club, a small club, which reminded me so much of the 100 Club. Yeah, but it had a black side to it, had an urban side to it. The punk was very white, and the grill was a mixture of white kids and black kids and arty kids and gay kids, and it was like a really, really interesting. So basically that's how I fused these two ideas of art, well, three ideas: art, punk, rap music, into that rock album cover. So basically that's really, I've jumped from doing White Man Hamster. I've done you the short version as well. So now I'm in New York and doing doing this, getting really embedded and really into this scene that was going on, because it was not just the music, it was this whole new musical form that had never been done before, even beyond punk, which was still basically a bass, drums, and a guitar and a singer. That it was still rock music. This was something completely different because it didn't have a band, it had vinyl and two record decks, and they made music out of it. And they made music out of other people's music by taking little bits of it and mixing it together. Again, I'm like, fucking hell, what? This is just unbelievable. And these guys would talk over it like spontaneously. So in a way, it was more punk than punk because it all was spontaneous. And then there was a dance movement that's going around it. So it was an incredible thing to see these two things that really became the biggest influence on culture in history, of pop culture in history. And I think about how it was interesting that all the punks, the main players of punk, were also in New York. Like the Clash were in New York when it all happened. They got Futura 2000, graffiti artists, and Malcolm and Bernie and me, and we were all like in New York, and we thought this is something really great. And the graffiti of New York and the subway trains, and it just was like it had. That's what it had that England didn't have. Yeah, the multicultural side of it. It definitely was like very powerful, and it blows me away that probably rap music and hip hop is the biggest revolution in music history, the biggest thing beyond the Beatles. It's like what it's done in terms of influence. And I thought, yeah, what a great thing to do. So I kind of got all of my starts from being in New York and in London at the right place at the right time, because a lot of it is to do with where you are. A lot of it is to do. I love, what I did love about punk though is how it really just started in London, then it kind of went to Manchester, and then it kind of went to Sheffield, and it started like a virus. It started to spread all over these people. And what was great about it, everybody interpreted it the way they wanted to do it, and you had great bands from different cities, and everybody was very. And I talked about the tribal thing. I mean, you know, in the beginning, everybody in the north hated the Pistols. They would go to Hull or something like that, and they did a thing for the miners, and then people started to go, you know what, this is all right. And so because I used to go to football a lot when I was young, I knew that hatred there was between north and south, and Leeds and Manchester and Liverpool, and if you were from the south, you were like they hated you, and it's like, and so it brought that together. It brought that together. But I think it's a good thing in a way, kind of tribalism. And when I worked with Oasis, they're Manchester. They would always call me a Cockney twat. Come on, yeah, Cockney twat. But I also realised it was a term of endearment. That's what we're like in England. We slag each other off as a way of a sign of affection. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so so basically, I saw it break down those barriers. I mean, you got to understand. I don't know what Leeds is like these days, but back in the '70s, it was grim. It was grim. It was grey. I mean, not that London was particularly sunny or anything like that, but the north had a very grim side to it that were like that. But it's completely changed. I mean, Newcastle to me might as well have been Mars. I mean, it's like, and I thought I saw that film. Get Carter, which is Michael Caine, and he's a London, and he's up in Newcastle, and it summed it up what it was like. And I think every city in England now they've become merged, if you know what I mean. They've all got nice places to live. It's got good. So I thought that was great, and then I thought the merging of when I went to the US, black music and white music were very separated. It was like, and so I saw the merging of that together, which is so I've been in that respect. It's been good to see where I started off hanging out with a bunch of racist, homophobic hooligans, because that's all there was. I mean, I lived in a council estate. What was I going to do? And it was like, and so going from that, where I knew that it wasn't me, into seeing things evolve and change culturally over the time I've been around. Um, so to be, and that's obviously influenced me. And doing the Duck Rock cover was just my punk side to it, because what I did with that cover was I wanted to use all of the shit that was going around, and Malcolm going to these different countries, and try and come up with something with a punky kind of attitude about just throw it, just put it shit on it, just do it, just fucking don't think about it, and just do it. And that's what that rock cover ended up being like, because I took the Keith Haring was an up and coming graffiti artist, Dondi White, but in those days again, you couldn't type anything in the internet, find Keith Haring. You had to go out and find the guy, and if you arranged to meet with him, he might not show up, and it took a lot of time. So I was in New York for about 5 or 6 weeks trying to sort of put all this stuff together and find the right people, because we were really determined that this wasn't going to be some, oh, this looks trendy over here, let's do this. We really wanted to be part of it and feel it and go out to clubs and feel, and that's what that cover is. It's exactly that. It's like, it's almost like, I put it to the thing that you go out and you're in the tube or the subway or the bus station, wherever it is, and you put a flyer up, right? And you do that. And then a couple of days later, someone's come along and graffitied on it. Then someone else has tried to rip it down off the wall, and someone else has put something. That's what the Duck Rock cover was. It was the idea that people had just slapped stuff on top of it. And there's something really organic and cultural about that. I mean, I don't know if you observe these things, but, you know, I like when you see a post and someone's put Fred Bloggs was here or something on it, and someone's trying to rip it, and someone's done a Hitler moustache on the, all that stuff I find very amusing, and so I like it's like organic and it evolves, and it's an interpretation of the way people see things. So I do. That's really where I'm at. That's where everything comes from. The idea of being able to be spontaneous, being able to see shit. Okay, I've got this, and I've got this, and I've got this. How can I put all that together? And so that's really where it went. But when I was in New York, just when I did that cover, I felt that was it really. That was my magnum opus in terms of punky DIY, and it got put in the Museum of Modern Art. And I've had so many people like breakdancing hip hop kids because of the ghetto blast from the front. It's been really probably my culturally most successful album cover, and it's in the permanent collection of the Museum of Modern Art in New York. So really, in that respect, I got to where I wanted to go. So what was the next thing? So I decided to go the complete opposite and go completely clean and minimalist, which is what I did with Iggy Pop, blah, 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 and the Psychedelic Furs with Midnight to Midnight. And then In Excess, which was my next huge achievement in terms of a band becoming, from being just a sort of relatively well-known Australian band that played in America and played clubs and was successful, to a mega international supergroup. And that was because I changed direction suddenly, and I went very clean and very clear and very, it wasn't esoteric in any way. It was like, this is this. And so that's how that really started. And through that, I mean, as you know, you don't really have to, I mean, at any point, if you want to ask me any other questions, go ahead. But that's how I got into doing videos, because I did the Iggy Pop, blah, blah, blah video. And back then, MTV had just started, and they were running out of directors. They didn't really, and so they started thinking, well, let's get other people that go to art school or photographers. And I was approached by a lady called Lynn in New York, and she said to me, she wanted to represent me. And I wasn't really interested in doing videos, because album covers to me were a personal thing that you had, and you had a collection, and it was this, like, almost like the Dead Sea Scrolls or some mythical sort of Bible or something that you had. And if ever you want to play a record, you could be entertained by looking at the record cover. Music videos was much more abstract, because you had no control over when you saw those. And yeah, they basically, oh, there's a video on TV, and MTV changed that in the respect that you could look at videos whenever you wanted, but I still thought the album covers were much more personal. And so I said, no, I wasn't really interested until the label, Iggy Pop's label, said, well, listen, we need a video for Real Wild Child on the blah, blah, blah record. We've got footage of him playing live. Would you just do some bits and pieces on it, like some graphics and stuff, and do the video? And so I said, okay, I'll do that. And I came to LA, and I gave him an old video camera, and I went and just shot some terrible bits and pieces out in the street. But I started to use my savvy about type and and I made a video, and I did a video out of it, and I actually loved it when I mean, I think it's amazing that I just saw the other day that 22 million views that has had, and that is like a video that most people, you would ask who Iggy Pop was, and they'd say they don't know. 22 million views, and it went on, and it's like my first T-shirt. It's very amateur, that video, like the first T-shirt. It was me learning about it. That, I was learning about, okay, you can put type in, but I know I can do that better next time. You can do this, and next time. And so that's how I got involved in video. And it was just because, again, I wasn't looking to do it. I got the opportunity to do it, so I was lucky to do it. And when I did it, I went, fuck, this is really actually really great, because what it is now you're putting music and images together. Now you've got them on a record, but this is actually all happening at the same time. So you're listening and you're watching at the same time. What a brilliant medium. And I still think to this day, music videos are and were the most brilliant art form that ever evolved in culture, because you were telling these stories through these artists. Because I used to listen to music on my headphones, like T-Rex or something, and in my head I'd get this imagery. But now, unfortunately, music videos have taken that away, because there's an image to pretty much every single song you know. And so I focused on doing music videos, and I ended up becoming an even more successful video director than I was an album cover designer. Again, obviously I obviously had talent, because you don't get through that talent, but I also was in the right place at the right time. And so I got these, but I also created, what I did create were really great relationships with bands, because everything today is so like disconnected. You don't have to actually meet anybody anymore. You just can talk to them, or do a conference, and you don't really ever get to know a person that way. And so when I was an album covers, I would always go into the studio, because I knew when you're in the studio, when the record was being finished, you were going to feel that moment of, wow, this is what they've got. You just be around the band, and you get part of what you get it. You get what, and you get what you need to do. It's much harder to do it like on a telephone, you know. And you get kind of, and so I developed these really good relationships with bands, because I took my time, and I did it with Iggy, I did it with Bob Dylan, I got to know him, and went in the studio with him, and went in the studio with In Excess, obviously, and I think the reason they ended up being successful was because of that, because I connected to the members in the band on a creative level before it was finished. So you were on the same trajectory as the band were going with the music. You were on that. You were like kind of coming next to them, and then sort of like merging with them, and visually you were going, oh, this would be great, or this would be great, and so that I think is another thing that's lost. It's that everything. Nobody wants to meet anymore. I mean, you'd have meetings with bands and a management and a label, and you sit around, and you really get to understand what the importance was, and what you wanted to separate from what you thought would be good from what they thought would be good, and try and find out things that work together. So really, Ethan, in a nutshell, that, yeah, unless you want to talk about specific covers or anything like that, that's basically how my philosophy has been, and how it's developed over the years applies to nearly every piece of work I've done. You know.
Well, I've picked some album and single covers. Are we all right to talk about the inspiration and stories behind them?
Okay, great.
Well, we'll start with The Clash, White Man in Hammersmith Palais. What was
Yeah.
that? What was the inspiration?
Um, well, it was an interesting story, because at this point, we'd done things with the Ramones, but we were still fans. I mean, we were fans at this point. Yeah, we would hitch up north to go and see the Clash. Went to Birmingham, and we were kind of hitch, and as they were getting bigger and bigger, they were getting more kind of hangers on and following them around. It was better. And we were at Barbarella's in Birmingham one day, and we'd hitched up there, and we'd hitch up there, and we'd go to somebody. Can we sleep on your floor tonight? It was that, and people were great. Yeah, of course. And so we were, Mickey Foot, who was the classic sound man, said, "Oh, Bernie would like to talk to you." And we thought, Bernie, and so he goes to us, "Do you want to live back to London?" And we thought, oh, he's gonna tell us stop hanging out with us, stop following the band, because he had even then he had a very like an aura about him that people were kind of a bit intimidated by Bernie. And even which is a funny thing, we didn't tell him we actually wanted to go to St. Albans, because we thought he would think that was really uncool that we lived in St. Albans. So we said, yeah. And on the way back, it was the most amazing thing, because and he's a great character. And people hate Bernie, but I love him. He told me his manifesto for the Clash, and he said that the Clash is not just the four guys on stage. It's Mickey Foot, the sound guy. It's the guy that does this. It's the person that does the clothes, and the person that does the artwork, and that is the Clash. And he said, I'd like you to do the new single cover for White Man Hammers Palace. So we thought, oh God, he wants to be part of it. That was too much. And just as we were driving past the exit for St. Albans, so we were actually at 3 o'clock in the morning, and we had to go and sleep on the station at St. Pancras in order to get the train back, just because we didn't want to seem uncool, because nobody thinks St. Albans is cool. So we so we kind of like talked to the band a little bit, and they were really into this Jamaican studios, the Jamaican studios, and they had their own little look and labels. And the original one was there was a gun on it, and then because I knew about Roy Lichtenstein, who did the pop art thing of the gun, they said great. And so we did that cover. I was still working with my friend Pete. He did the back with the guy in the gun target, and I did the front label. And well, that was I knew then that this was really important. I knew that this was the Clash, and single covers were more important than album covers then, because you had they created the art form really, single covers, because A, people could afford single covers more than they could album covers, and B, you didn't have any limitations on it so much. With an album cover, you always meant to have the title at the top, but with a single cover, you could do different things. And we thought it was great to do a label, and so we came up with this idea, and we wanted to do 4 different colors: pink, green, blue, and pink, green, blue, and yellow, right? And so we did them. And again, I would have done it for nothing. But I remember going up to the rehearsal rooms, rehearsals, to see Bernie, and Mick was there, Mick Jones, and he said, "Oh, the cover looks great. Did you get one?" We said no, and so he went and got me a box of about 50. I wish I kept them, because they'd be worth a fortune now. And I remember as I was going back to Camden Tube Station, there was a photo booth, and I thought, I want to just document this moment. I don't know if you ever saw that picture of me, but it's like I'm holding the Clash cover up. It's on the internet. It's on my website. But I'm holding the Mike Hammers Palais cover up, and I've been asked if people get a copy of that picture more than anything else. It's like, because it really was, as I said in the past, an honest what punks were like in that point. I had the spiky hair, and I wasn't over the top and blonde, dyed hair, and I was like holding this cover up. So that's how that came about. And it's been one of those things. I mean, I've been very lucky that the first thing I ever did was the Ramones. The first single cover I did was the Clash. The first album cover I did was Dexys Minute Runs. The first video I did was Iggy Pop. You couldn't get more a credible artist and knows to do your first thing as. And so, of course, you don't think of this at the time, but later it dawns on you. You know what? Fucking hell, that's amazing. And so, and White Man and Hammers Palais is a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant song, because it was a completely different change for them, because they went much more mellow, and still got that punky edge and mixed guitar. And basically, so that's how that came about, And it's been copied many times. And there's an artist that does big versions of them, painted versions of that. So that's why I'm in the Hammers Palais for you.
What about the Sex Pistols, the Filthy Lucre Live?
Well, that was '96. That was. I knew the band. I knew really good friends with Paul and Steve. And then in 1996, when they did the first comeback tour, they said to me, "Do you want to do the new cover?" And I said, "Yeah, great." And so I was in London. When they did the press conference at the 100 Club. I was the MC. I MC'd the whole thing, and then I did. It was great. That was great, and it was like this time it was different, but by this point I knew everybody, and so I remember the rehearsing. I went to rehearsal, and it was great to go up with Steve Jones right as he's playing Nevermind the Bollocks, and Chris Thomas produced it, and he produced Nevermind the Bollocks as well. But there was the biggest problem about that was it was just in the beginning of that, Rotten was great. He started to get into this really moody thing, and then he had the record label was run by this woman who was a complete idiot. She was the secretary up there, and she married the president, and so her name was Nancy Berry, and she kind of took over, and she kept trying to change everything I was doing, and so I kind of compromised that cover. It was you know, what it was going to be originally was I was going to take some. It's very, you know, because they're very English. You know, I want to take. You know, do you ever still? Do they still do those saucy postcards? Those English ones are the rude postcards of the guy with a woman with huge breasts. They're cartoons. They're really huge for a while. Funny from Blackpool, you'd get like a tiny little bald guy with a big woman with massive breasts standing in front of him. They're like Carry On films, but I thought that was really funny and very English to do a postcard like that on it. But she changed it and she put another piece of artwork that I did was a compromise, and that's how that ended up. And Shorty Lucre from the Bill Grundy show from the newspapers, yeah, and it was we did a special silver color, and it was okay, but it wasn't. I wanted to sort of reinvent it a little bit, and like Jamie Reed had done with the Queen, and these postcards I still think are great. You can find them on the internet, you know, just really funny from that period. '70s was like Kenneth Williams and Carry On films and stuff like that. It was an English kind of naughtiness, and so that's how that evolved. But it was a live record, and I don't think live records ever really work. And yeah, I saw a couple of shows and they were great, and then they deteriorated terribly, and now they've got the new guys singing, and that's great because I think that's reinvigorated them, and they're playing the Royal Albert Hall, believe it or not.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
hear about that? Yeah, yeah, he's
yeah, yeah.
good. He's good. At first I was like, said to Steve, it's like, it's just really difficult for me to picture anyone else but Rotten because Rotten was absolutely fucking brilliant in the beginning of that. Brilliant. He couldn't have got a better person. He got it. He got it. But I saw how negative he is and how he drinks too much and he takes too many drugs and he's kind of he's become this miserable old kind of. And so when I saw this guy, he's like the contemporary version of him. He's got credibility and he's got integrity, and I think that's something Rotten didn't have. So that's the Filthy Lucre. What's the next
What
one?
what about Bob Dylan biography?
That's another. Well, it's great. I don't know if you've seen the film, but the film is brilliant. A Complete Unknown, and that I did. That was because of Malcolm McLaren. Malcolm Bob, and I should shows it because to me, Bob Dylan is the ultimate punk in every sense of the word. Doesn't give a shit about things, and so I Malcolm. He had asked Malcolm to do a video for him, and Malcolm wasn't interested. He didn't want to do it, and he told me to go and meet with him. So when I met with him, and I knew Malcolm didn't want the video, but I didn't tell him at that point. But I said, "Oh, if you need an album cover," and they said, "Great, great." So this is for Empire Burlesque. It was not a very good album, but anyway, so Bob loved it, and I got to get close to Bob, and he really is a great sort of character. And then they said to me, "Well, we're doing a big collection of all the best of Bob Dylan called Biograph. Would you do that cover?" And I said, "Oh yeah, great." You know, because I wasn't a fan of Bob Dylan, so I wasn't as impressed by him as most people were, especially in America. And he liked that. He liked the fact that I wasn't being sycophantic. I was just talking to because I wasn't overwhelmed by him. So and they said to me, "Well, you come. We've got some photographs. Come to the office and choose a photograph." And I went there. 2,000 photographs I had to go through. 2,000. And as soon as I saw that one picture of him, that was it. I'm like, that's it. You know, because he looked very punky. He looked like Johnny Thunders or Tom. What's his name? Tom Cooper Clark. Tom Cooper Clark. Who's a poet? Um,
John Cooper Clarke.
John Cooper Clark. Yeah, I love John Cooper. And he looked like John Cooper Clark. And I thought, that's it. He's a poet, he's a punk, he's all these things. So I chose that and I updated it and he loved it. And it was, yeah, so that's how I got involved with doing that. But yeah, it turned out to be great. I mean, I was lucky. I tapped into the right idea. And when I look at the movie, it was that picture was from his best, absolute best creative moments. And so that photograph represents everything that Dylan is and it's interesting that that's the period they chose to do the filming. So it worked on every aspect of it. You know, it's great.
Have you seen the new film? Is that what you talk about? The new one?
Yeah,
Is it
yeah.
good?
Have you seen it?
No, no.
Oh, you have to see it. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're not a Bob Dylan fan, first of all, Timothy Chalamet nails his character, nails it really. But again, it was very punk. I mean, it was playing acoustic guitar was a version of punk back then. But it was great because then he's exactly what Dylan is. He's not a person that will compromise. He doesn't even go to the record label. If he gets invited to stuff he doesn't want to meet, he's very like he doesn't care about the hysteria that goes on around it. And so I love him for that. So yeah, so when you get a chance to see it,
Yeah, I will do definitely. Yeah.
Yeah,
What about
yeah,
the Cult Sonic Temple?
yeah. Another one. Yeah, and I still in touch with Ian actually, and that was an interesting one because okay, an example was I did the Empire Brothers cover for Bob Dylan, but what used to happen when I started doing album covers was that they gave me a photograph and I had to make an album cover, and I was saying, oh, I would have done the photograph like this. So then I became an art director where I chose the photographer so we could work together in what I wanted on the cover. And one of the reasons I moved away from England was I wanted more control over what the covers looked like, choose a photographer, and so I did that. And then Empire Burlesque, I, I was given a photograph. It wouldn't have been my choice, not my favorite cover. And the biograph thing, I realized it was an archival thing. So they wanted me to do the cover, but they said they'd already got a photographer. His name's Andrew McPherson. He's a great photographer. He's a fashion photographer. And what I thought for the cult is they need to be fucking rock and roll. And so I even told Andrew, I said, you know what? I'm going to take your photographs. I'm going to completely fuck them up. So don't think they're going to be, yeah, because he's very fashion. And so again, the moment I saw Billy with that guitar thing like that, I thought that's brilliant. Bit difficult because it was like I was putting Billy on the cover and Ian's in the background, and that was a little bit tricky trying to get that through. But I said to them, don't look at it as a personal thing because you don't even can't even tell. It's just and I want to make it rock and colourful. And Andrew McPherson takes black and white pictures, and this is the first time I'd ever worked on a computer to do it. There was this new thing called a Cytex machine, and basically what it was up until this period, I had to cut and paste everything. So I'd have to like strip in the thing or do it all by hand, make sure it was all, and put the photograph down and do all this stuff and build up layers. But it still was an organic a three-dimensional object. But now you can go into a computer, put all these images in it and move them around. And I just thought, oh my God, that is brilliant. And back then it was like every time we did it, it took 45 minutes to render it, right? So now it's done in 30 seconds. But back then it was, but it was still quicker than the other way. And so I'd spend hours in this place and I put color into it and I put that background of him and the microphone. And I said, I want to make it really psychedelic and out of black and white, which is really hard to do. But this machine, you could do it. And that, and Ian came into the Ian came into the and sat with me, and we kind of worked on it together. He's great, Ian, and you know we had a good time doing that cover, and that again has become a really iconic cover. You know, I never think about it at the time, but because you don't think, oh, I'm going to be doing an iconic album cover. You just do it, and you hope, and it taps in with people. So yeah, that's Sonic Temple.
Um, Duran Duran's Ordinary World single is
Right.
the next one I've got.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's that. Yeah, funny thing when I grew up, when I was a punk and Duran Duran came along, I thought at the beginning they were everything I was against, and then that whole new romantic thing came up, and I wasn't really into it. And I wasn't really into Duran Duran, and then a friend of mine said to me, "Oh, John Taylor's looking for you to do the new album cover of Duran Duran." I thought that's odd. Anyway, so I was in London and I went to meet John, and me and John just got on like a house on fire. And we just all the same references. I think we were there, we were talking to each other for 5 hours, and he said become one of my closest friends. Um, and really it was interesting because I was wondering, well, what am I going to do with Duran Duran? It's like a difficult one. But they at that point were thinking they'd had enough of the big, they wanted to get more punky, I guess. So that's why we came up with the photo booths. They went out to photo booths. And then tape and all this kind of stuff. So we made a really, really sort of iconic punk record cover for them. But we added special colors, and from that, they asked me to do the video. So I based, and it was called the Wedding Album. It wasn't really called the Wedding Album. It was actually called Duran Duran by Duran Duran. But they wanted to use their parents' wedding pictures on it, and I thought, actually, you can't. It's really tricky because it's very kitsch wedding photographs. What can I do to make it so it's kind of cool? And so I was really influenced a lot by an American artist called Robert Rauschenberg that did photographs and paint on them and all this kind of shit. So that's where that started. And from that, when they asked me to do the video, I thought, well, I need to make it look like the album cover. So I went for the wedding idea and this girl walking around because you wanted, yeah, they were into sort of still wanted to make it fashionable and Duran Duran. And then I found this incredible place in Pasadena here called Huntington Gardens, which is like all these different gardens, Japanese, Australian, cactus. and I shot the stuff for them, and I went to the studio. I mean, shot the stuff for the extras. I mean, yeah, the extras and the girl, and then went to the studio and shot Duran Duran in a white studio. But this is again is all done on film. There was no digital side to it, so you had to shoot the performance, get it all transferred, cut, and then come back a week later and project it all on screens and have. And so we had these giant big screens hanging in this park at night, and we shot it like that. Now nobody thinks that. People think that's all done in CGI, and it's not. It's all done organically, and so really hard work. And again, it was like I was struggling at the time. Is have I gone too far with this? Is it too much? And I had to let my editor just because I had so much good stuff. I threw it all in there, and it looked a mess. And so I got my editor. He told me, "Listen, I'll figure it out. You go and take some time off." And he did a cut. That was the cut, and that video really shot me to fame, if you like, because it was like they came back like massive after that. They'd been going down slightly, and it was a different generation of fans, and so that video really brought them back and was incredibly successful for me. And I just saw 149 million views it's had. Now, okay, yeah, I look at these views on and people talk about how many views you got on YouTube. Well, you can say 149 million is a lot, but you get someone like fucking Taylor Swift who's got almost a billion. But 149 million, but that's taken into account for the years it was on MTV when there weren't people count. It was on MTV, heavy rotation. That must have been seen by a billion people. You know what I mean? So it only calculates that. So that was huge, and that shot me to sort of stardom where I could actually choose any job I wanted to do then. And yeah, that was it.
Before we get on to more videos, I just want to talk about Kick with In Excess.
Kick was, I heard a song called What You Need that was playing at the time in New York. I thought, that's a great song because it was like, it had a dancing to it, but it was rock. But I didn't know who they were. And a friend of mine actually knew them. And she said, they're playing, do you want to come see the show? And I went to the show. And then I saw this band. And I thought, why aren't they bigger? I mean, they were big, but why aren't they bigger? Yeah, they've got such a great singer. He looks brilliant. He's like a rock star, but he was never really pushed up front. And so I said to Michael, when I got to him, I said, I've got a good idea for the cover. I think I should do the cover. I said, it's going to take you to, I think it's perfect for what you want to do. So I went down to Sydney. I spent time in the studio, got to know the other guys. And what I decided I wanted to make it, they were just an Australian band, but I wanted to make them an international band. I wanted them to be a band that you recognize you got. And so that's why I came up with the idea of having each member on this cover so you could see who they were. Because everything up until that time had been a bit cloudy. You couldn't tell the bass player. And I think people want to know who's in the band. And you definitely want to know who Michael Hutchence is. So I had to come up with a way of making it so it wasn't just him on the cover. So I shot them individually and then I put them into like a composite. So it looked like, it was never meant to look like they were really all together, but it was meant to look like they were almost together. I didn't want it to be, I wanted it to be a bit fucked up with that. And so I did that cover, and then there was a backlash from management because they didn't like it because they figured they didn't want me push. They wanted to push Michael because it was a band, and I got that, I understood that, and that's why I got a gatefold cover so you could see it when you open that because that really is the cover. It's not just that front thing. Management didn't like it. They thought it scared them because it made them think that Michael might leave the band, do his own thing. And Michael's backed me up on it, and so did the record label. And again, it's like one of those covers that has been. I mean, it makes me laugh now when I see all their stuff they put in there, repackaged it, and how much they pushed that image still. When the management didn't really like it in the beginning, but it was hugely successful. That was in terms of the cover, helped with the record a lot.
On to the videos. What about Oasis's Sunday Morning Call?
Yeah. Well, I love working with Oasis, even though they were like a pain. I mean, the thing about Oasis is, I remember when I first met them and they played here in LA at the Whiskey, and it's a famous one where Noel stormed off stage or Liam did. But that's who they are, I've got to say. And I went to this meeting and they were with a record label and they were going to do drugs in the toilet every 5 minutes. But I remember going, we never talked about the video. And Liam just came up to me and he goes, yeah, it's all right, you're right. I won't try and attempt to do a Manchester accent, but he goes, it's all right, it's all right. He goes, just make sure it gets good, otherwise, he goes to me. So I thought that was really funny that he liked it. He said, well, you don't have any problems with it. And so I did a couple of videos for them, but another Sunday morning call, it was Noel's idea about doing a film based on a film called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Jack Nicholson, where Jack Nicholson, in order to get out of a prison sentence, he makes himself like he's insane, so he gets into a mental asylum where it's easier. And so we did that, and that guy that's in it, I can't remember his name, Scottish actor that was in the original stage version of Train Spotting, great guy it was. We decided for the first time, it's the first narrative, let's make it. The band didn't even want to be in it. They wanted it to be a story, but the record label insisted on being in it. And we went up to Canada and we shot in an old Victorian mental asylum, and those characters in it, they were in it, were based off of cultural revolutionary things like Hell's Angel, Black Panthers, punk. So each one of those people that you see in it is Hell's Angel, punk, Black Panthers. What was the other one? It was four. And so they were all like, this is what happens when you are like part of a cultural movement. They demonize you. They think you're insane. So that was what the basis of that idea was. I always think it's really funny when I heard an interview with Noel. He goes, "Well, we want it to be like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but it probably end up being like One Flew Over the Robin's Nest." So that was funny. He never like. I've got, yeah. I did a lot of work on that, and it was. I love the song. Thought the song was great. Liam hated it because he didn't have anything to do in it, and I got him playing the piano, but he was like he didn't want to play piano. He wanted to get out of there. He didn't. But what I love about them is, even though they're piss takers, I mean, me and Noel got on because of football, because he's Man City and I'm Chelsea, and we're watching these old 70s football characters. And we sat in this room, I gave him a camera, and all these different Rodney Marsh and George Best, and I love that of him because he had a real love of the game, and so we watched those things together, and he loved it. He loved doing that, and so I utilised that in it. That's why I've got them playing football in the end, because in the film, I think what they want to do in the original film, they want to listen to this baseball game on the radio, but the nurse stops them doing it. So Jack Nicholson starts to make it up. He starts making his own commentary. So I thought, why don't we do a football match without football? And so because the guy takes the ball away, and so they do this pretend. The guy was brilliant in it because one of the guys, he dribbles around everybody and he scores. He goes and gets the ball out of the net, and it doesn't exist. And Oasis loved that. They thought it was really funny. So yeah, that was good, but that was very storyboard. It was unusual for me. It had a beginning, middle, and an end. So I love that video. Actually, I think it's great. That one of my best ones.
What about Who Feels Love with Oasis?
Oh yeah, that's probably got to be one of my favorite videos. I just said to them, I know a place in California called Death Valley. I said, you just got to trust me on it. It's like another planet. And when they got there, I mean, they're from like, where is it, Manchester? They're like, oh my God, there's nothing like in England. You can't even see it. It's nothing in comparison. It's like another planet and the light there. So I wanted them to be, because I wanted them to be like, it wanted to be sort of slightly druggy. And one thing they cut out of it, which I think was a shame, they didn't like it in the end, was a lot of like the acid house kids would go to death. They'd drop acid, be out there, have like little raves out in the desert, and the state trooper that was with us told me a story how he saw these like these 20 people coming out from the distance, all fucked up, and so I wanted them to sort of bump into this crowd of young acid house kids who like trip in the desert, but they cut that out of it. So but it still works. I still thought it was this long video. Um, but I loved all that. The backdrop of it was great, and walking across that flatbed with that Manchester walk that they have, and yeah, I think it's one of the most beautiful videos I've shot for certain. That's how that went down. But the funny story about that, one funny thing is, so we're staying at this. I was staying at this. There's two hotels in Death Valley. One is called the Furnace Creek Inn, and the other is called Stovepipe Wells. And Stovepipe Wells is the affordable one, and Furnace Creek is the five-star hotel in the middle of the desert, right? Super expensive, and they've got a restaurant, and then they have a code for the restaurant. They have a dress code for the restaurant. So I used to show up at night all with the jeans on. They said, "Sorry, you can't come in here. You're wearing jeans." And they're like, "What?" And yeah, they're wearing jeans, but they're wearing 200 quid jeans. They're not wearing like So they didn't have it in the restaurant, and we're talking about a place in the middle of fucking nowhere. It's not like you're in New York or Tokyo or somewhere like that, wasn't it? So that was I thought that was a funny position to see them in, them getting refused entry because they were wearing jeans. Okay, that's that one.
What about Alanis Morissette? You want to know?
Basically, I wasn't really interested in doing for personal reasons that video because my ex was working at the record label and I didn't want anything to do with her, and I didn't want her telling me what to do. So I kind of wrote it half-heartedly because I didn't really want to do it. I tried to write, and I just wrote a thing saying I'll go to Death Valley, same place as I shot Oasis, and we'll go to Death Valley and we'll shoot something. And they kept wanting me to elaborate on it, and I said no, I'm gonna. And I actually didn't know what I was going to be doing, so I went out and got a Super 8 camera, whereas the Oasis was a 35 millimeter anamorphic camera, which is super high quality, and the Alanis one was Super 8, which is really low quality, but I thought that would be good for her. And I just made that up as I went along, basically. I just based off an idea that my friend was carrying, a photographer was there, she was carrying this little suitcase that she had her equipment in, and I noticed a little bit of material hanging out of it. And I thought, I said, well, that's what it'll be. It'll be her like with a suitcase, like she's on this mission, like the Terminator, across the country to, and that's how that idea came up. And I totally made it up as I went along. But it was. Oh, one thing I'll tell you though, with her, nobody knew who she was at the time. And she was on Madonna's management, big time. There's a big, huge pressure on to make it good. And I remember we were shooting that bit when she's rolling around on the ground in that white sand, and you know, all the videos I've done, the crew I've done worked with, they've seen it all before. Nobody impressed them. They've seen everybody. So nobody ever. I looked around at every single person on that set were absolutely like riveted by her performance. They couldn't say because it was brilliant performance. And I realised that's what it was. It's got to have a really strong performance because you didn't really see female singers doing that like men do. She was like more like a male performer, and what was great that came from that was it really liberated women to the point where they say, you know what, we can fucking be just as good as men as singers. And so they started the Lilith Fair, which was a big thing they did with all female artists. So I feel kind of proud that achieved that. I think that wasn't my intention. My intention was, wow, she can perform. Let's make her look great. Not a lot of close-ups in there because at the time she had really bad skin, and also performance was really a little bit unnerving because she was so mannish with it. I didn't think it was very flattering, but yeah, it got wow, it went through the roof. That did really massive video. Um, Not my favorite video, but in terms of its importance, yeah, I didn't get on with her. Didn't like her very much, you know.
Why?
She, yeah. Um, because she thought she knew better than I did, and she wanted to change her stuff around. I refused, and we got in this. Yeah, I let her do one thing. At the point, you got to remember, she was nobody, and I was successful, so I knew what I was doing. But she tried to, like she does everyone, try to manipulate me by me. Oh, sweet, and then go, oh, could you just do this? And could you just do this? Went on to be literally everything. So I kind of like fell out with her about it, and yeah, because then she said, "Oh, the video's only good because yeah, I changed everything Nick did, which she didn't do. Yeah, but yeah, and it made me go, well, what was that all about?" Okay, next one.
Bee Gees alone.
Oh, good, that's a funny one to pick up on. Um, that was a point when I was literally I was doing weird things like Cheap Trick and getting a lot of money to do them, but not really a lot of love for it. And they were pretty old at this point, and they were just not at all cool. And I wanted to do something that was kind of cool. And I thought I'd use that idea of that movie Barbarella, which is where the word Duran Duran got the name from, the movie Barbarella with Jane Fonda, where she's in a spaceship and she's floating around. And I thought space is a great place as a metaphor for alone. But again, I didn't really like them. They were just like they didn't get what I was doing. But the management level, I had to persuade them that I was a cool guy. It's going to make them look good. But I could tell they didn't really want me to do it. And yeah, and then they ended up putting some stuff of them in the studio. So again, it was just one of those videos. I sort of just did it, and I didn't really care that much. I hate to say that, but it's true. You
Uh,
know.
well, what about Seahorses, Love is the Law.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're from up your way. No, they're Wigan, aren't they? They're from Wigan or
Um,
Sheffield.
the singer's from York, but John
Yeah,
Squire from the
that's right.
Stone
Yeah,
Roses.
yeah. Stone Roses. He was brilliant. He's from Manchester, but the rest of them for like from up New York and that way. And I love that singer was great. Um, I got and I thought that song didn't do as well as I thought it should because he had a great voice. And what I loved about the new group, he sang in his accent. I love that. I hate when groups sing in American accent or something. And the same with Liam. Liam's a little bit affected, but he sung in his Yorkshire accent, and I thought that was great. But well, I thought that it was really funny because I had this really romantic notion of the English seaside and how it's beautiful, but you've got pebbles on the beach and it's not sand and it's usually black and the waves. The day I went to shoot there was the hottest day. There was no waves. It was like it was the opposite of what I wanted to do. So I had to make it look more moody. And I like the idea of them playing in front of the ocean and we did that. But they had a sense of humour. So I got the guy in the penny farthing, the policeman, and then the old nudie books from the 50s. And yeah, he was. I think that it was a really interesting point because the Stone Roses are broken up. I think John just wanted Squire just wanted to just have some people they could control, and those guys kind of like were under his command a little bit. I didn't think it was like a band particularly, but yeah, I like that video. I'm glad you picked up on that one because I've never ever been asked a question about that video.
It's
Funny. Yeah.
he only did one album, but it's a brilliant album as well. I love that song, "Love Is the Law" as well.
Yeah, I think it's great. Great. And he's got that beautiful bit when he goes high up on his notes in it. And yeah, it's a great song. Good call on that one. Yeah.
Uh, what about Sleeper in between it? It's got that
Uh,
supermarket sweeper vibe to
yeah.
it.
Well, I love that band. I heard that song, funny enough, and I loved it. I thought it was great, and I thought she was good. And so they were apparently they were looking to redo a video for America because they didn't like the one they did already. And so I got them in them, and they were great. And I just found that there was this old hotel where Robert Kennedy was assassinated called the Ambassador Hotel, and I shot it all around there. And yeah, I can't really remember too much about it, but just we got that spacesuit from a costume place that did the right stuff. So an absolute copy of the original spacesuits that were on Gemini. I don't know, what, to be honest on that one, Ethan, I can't even remember what my thinking was on that, but I always wanted to have, I thought she was great. She was cute looking and I loved the way she performed. And I had a sort of a formula that I did. I like to always have performance in it. I like to see the band walking and I would put bits in between it. I mean, I always want to see bands perform. That's what they do. They perform. Some people don't want to have bands performing, but I do. The only time I really didn't want to do it was with the Oasis Another Sunday Morning Call because I thought it was about a narrative and about a story. But I managed to work there. But yeah, good one, Sleeper. Yeah.
Well, with music videos, you usually try to tell a story within like 3 minutes, aren't you? How
Yeah,
hard
you
is
can,
it to do
yeah,
that?
yeah. Or you can just do a straight up performance and just have them performing. I like to take an element of what's in the lyric and twist it around in some way. And I can't remember what was in that song that made me think of that spacesuit, but there's usually something in there that I go, oh, this would be a really different way of putting something in it, and just have it as a sort of cutaway, but in some way make it all part of the same thing.
What
So.
what was the most expensive video?
Oh, believe it or not, it was the Backbeat, the Backbeat video with. Do you remember that? The Beatles film came out Backbeat, and they put together like an alternative supergroup with Greg Dooley from the Afghan Whigs, Thurston Moore from Sonic Youth, Mike Mills from REM, and Dave Grohl from Nirvana, and so they did the soundtrack to it, and yeah, and I wanted to make it. It was about $400,000 that video, but mainly because we shot a good. This is a good story. It's actually a good story, and I've never been asked this question. Um, Dave Grohl was in Nirvana, right, and he was in Germany. Most of the other guys that were in the band were in New York, so I had to go to New York, shoot the band playing with a standing drummer, and then go to Munich to shoot Dave Grohl. Now I went to Munich and and um and I went to see Nirvana. I got to see Nirvana. It was their last ever show. I got to see the last ever show in Munich, and it was brilliant. It was like I walked into this thing, and I was like, "Oh, brilliant!" So I didn't know it was going to be the last show. So the next day, I said, "Well, I hadn't met Dave." I said, "Let me go. I'll go with the driver, and we'll pick him up from the hotel so I can get to know him a little bit." So we got him and drove back, and then he started going about, "Oh, they're cancelling the rest of the tour because the singer's not feeling well." And they did. They went to play in Italy the next day, and they cancelled it, and then they never played another show again. And 2 weeks later, I was up in Seattle, funny enough, doing a video for a group called what was it? I forgot what the name was now, but anyway, song for, and that's when Kurt Cobain killed himself. But so Dave Grohl's playing drums on that, and I took bits of the film, the Beatles film, and I interspersed it. And that ended up costing 400,000. Even though it wasn't meant to look like it cost 400,000. It was meant to look gritty, but just because I had to go to different towns, and then I guess I really did. I never did anything for $1 million. I did that, and around my budgets around them are about 250,000, which gets you a lot of stuff these days. I mean, budgets have gone down. Unless you're Taylor Swift, nobody's spending money on videos anymore. Shame, really.
What video took the most planning? Was it that Sunday morning call?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, yeah. Because I had to make sure it was a narrative, so I had to have storyboards, and I had to make sure it's singing. Yeah, so it was good. It was a point I wanted to do that. Um, yeah. So that's that.
What was your favourite video to shoot, or what was your favourite after seeing the finished outcome?
Oh, easily. That's the Duran Duran pressure off video. I mean, I love that video because it's really simple, but it's actually quite complicated. And I shot things at 1,000 frames per minute, and I shot everybody individually. And I shoot Janelle Monáe and Nile Rodgers in LA, and I shot the band in London. I shot All Against White, and I had them floating in the air because it was taken from this book called Jump. There was a photographer, Nick Rhodes, had discovered from the 50s, who took photographs of people jumping in the air, like Marilyn Monroe and Orson Welles and people like that. And I loved it. I thought it matched the song, and the idea was to make it look like they were all in the same shot, even though they weren't. And it's simple, but I think it's the only video I can quite honestly say that I actually wouldn't change a thing in it. Yeah, I loved it. Still do.
Well, it's been absolutely brilliant to speak to you.
Yeah.
Just to finish off, what are you up
Yeah.
to these days in LA?
Well, I just did that documentary, and I've got a lot of feedback on that, and it's going to all these festivals. Already won 7 awards on that, so it's interesting being on the other side of the camera. And then I'm doing artwork and painting, and I've sold some of my paintings, and then I'm doing this book on Malcolm McLaren that I've got to deal with Rizzoli, and that's going to be interesting because it's just about that period. I don't think Malcolm gets the credit he deserves for his influence from that album because it influenced fashion, it influenced art, it influenced film, it influenced music. And so it's a sort of an art book based around a lot of the artwork that I did and the artwork of Keith Haring and the artwork of Dondi White. And it's a kind and the photographs of Bob Gruen. And it's just specifically, it's not biography, it's just specifically that moment. And I think that Buffalo Girls, when it came out in Europe, was people never heard anything like it before. And that's sometimes forgotten. So I think that's what that's going to be about. And that's what I'm sort of in the process of working on right now.
I saw some of your art. I think it's brilliant on that documentary at the end when you showed
Yeah,
bits and pieces. Where
yeah,
can
yeah.
people keep up to date with your work and if they want to buy any art
Uh,
and look at the art or whatever?
yeah, well, my website is one. I've got to update it a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I would say I don't know, to be quite honest. I mean, there's a. I'll send you a couple of links after we're finished. I'll text them to you.
All right,
Have it.
choose.
Yeah.
You got
All
like
right.
an Instagram or Twitter or to.
Yeah, I've got Instagram, which is Nick Egan Art. I think it's Nick Egan Art Instagram. I'm not a big fan of Instagram. I had an Instagram account that got hacked, and this is why I hate them. Got hacked, so I had a couple of thousand followers right on it. I wasn't really particularly going out looking for followers. I just kind of got them, and then it got hacked, and I got a notice from Instagram saying somebody's logged into your account under this email. I go, well, that's not me. So they shut it down, and so I lost every follower I had, and it was like, oh, I just can't be bothered to go through it all again. Yeah, they can get me on Facebook, really. I
What
don't do
about
Twitter. I
Facebook?
mean, you know what it is to me. I I I got too much to do to be bothered with doing. And you all these everybody, they have people doing it for them. They don't do it themselves. So yeah, Facebook and also my website nickegan.com and my gallery, which is my artwork, which is it's just wilmergallery.com. And I got a gallery in Glasgow where the stuff is a lot cheaper called subversiongallery.com. .co.uk, subversiongallery.co.uk, and they're brilliant. You know, they've got a great gallery in Glasgow. And then the book, there's not, I mean, the book, there's nothing they can find out about the book right now because we're still putting it, it's still trying to get all the elements together. So, but I'll let you know, or you can check in with me, you know, every once in a while, and I'll keep you updated.
Yeah, nice one. Yeah, it's been great
Yeah,
to
great.
finally get it done. It took a while,
Yeah,
but
no, you never. I knew it'd work out one way or another, but you know, it's good and it's been great. I've really you asked me a couple of really interesting questions that I've never been asked before. Because you can imagine I get asked the same question a lot, and that you threw a couple in there that were good. I mean, they're all good, but that one, those ones, it really made me think. So I like that.
yeah, thank you for
Well
that. Yeah,
done.
yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate you being so supportive and definitely of understanding really what the roots of music is and what it means creatively and how yeah, what we're getting at the moment is we're getting into this corporate world with where Taylor Swift is like huge, and I have no fucking idea why because it looks like an old music sound. I mean, so it's good that there are people like you flying the flag.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, can you take care? Let me know when you're gonna put it out.
Yeah, I will do. Yeah, thank you. Nice one.
Fine, cheers, mate. Bye.
Nice one. Bye. Bye.